All right, so we're back with chapter 8, and we're talking about different types of economies. And so hopefully you've all had a chance to look at the textbook so you can kind of think about this. In class, I would actually have you pair off with a partner, and we're going to discuss these. So the formal economy. So who can think of an example of a formal economic action? And this is basically anything that is recorded officially. So if you've been watching the news, they've been talking about how many people have filed for unemployment in this country, right? What's the unemployment rate? That's something in the formal economy. If you have a job where they take taxes out of your paycheck, right? It's recorded, it's formal, it's legalized. Most of us have participated in the formal economy. So then the informal economy, right? Well, by the very name, right, you're going to think it's the opposite. So think of some ideas, right? These are things that are unrecorded. So if you ever worked for somebody for cash, this could be as simple as maybe you babysat for your aunt. She gave you $20, right? Or it could be something like the day laborers that tend to congregate outside of stores like Home Depot, right, where they're going to work for cash. And oftentimes we see the informal economy arise when there is a lack of formal employment opportunities. The people that are day laborers outside of the Home Depot, right? Maybe you hire them for the day to help work in your garden or do a construction job. That's not because they want to be there, it's because they can't find other work. And if an economy is in that situation, if there are barriers, either legal or economic, that stop that, you'll see that. So the illegal economy. Now in class is always kind of a fun thing. Who's going to admit to the illegal economy? Because people come up with the ideas of, selling drugs, which is definitely illegal. But what if you have downloaded movies? It used to be that if you downloaded movies and gave them to your friends, you could be prosecuted for that. Technically, you still can, right? You're stealing the movie. People who do scams. How many of you gotten that scam on the phone? Please, you have to call. There's an arrest warrant for you, and if you don't come and give us this, or scam spam emails, right? So they can be violent like a drug deal, but they can also be deceptive practices. So social economy is kind of a tough one for students, and I always think of this. Social economy, it illustrates the fact that a lot of these economic actions can kind of just blur the boundaries, right? So something that is illegal is also probably informal, right? Something that's informal doesn't have to be illegal, but it can be. But social economy, working for nonprofits. So if you volunteer your time at a church or work for a nonprofit organization, I will share with you if I haven't already. I live in this. It's a housing project for senior citizens that's run by a nonprofit agency, and its mission is to have intergenerational housing. So that's why they have us, my family, because they want a house with senior citizens and people with children, and then they want to have college age students. So next door to us, across the hall, are four college kids who, in exchange for room and board, keep the house clean for the senior citizens, right? So I'm involved in that with my rent as the social economy, it's a nonprofit. All right. Now the communal economy, very similar in many ways to the informal, that you're not doing records, and it's usually cashless. So maybe you do a favor for a friend. I'll take you to the airport and they wax your car or something like that, right? Trade. Or a lot of people will do things for your neighbors, right? So everyone helps, the old folks shovel the driveway in the winter. It's cashless. And this is usually among communities like a neighborhood, okay? Now, the domestic economy. Hearing a lot about that lately. Division of labor in the home. We're all taking care of the house right now. But think about that. Think about the housework that you're doing right now because you're stuck home. Now, it isn't like there's more housework to be done, right? It's always been there, but now you are there to see it. Does anybody get paid for that, right? You don't pay your mom to cook for you or your father to do the laundry. It just has to be done. But what if you think about this? If that is the type of economy, the domestic economy where stuff in the house is being done and not being paid, then it's also, informal, so it's not recorded, right? What if it is recorded? You hire people to do it. Then it is formal. Some countries have this argument that their gross domestic product, their economic activities as a whole, look smaller because a lot of their work is hidden. Domestic economies are often not recorded. Another thing about domestic economies, and as we'll talk about this, they are very highly gendered. When I say someone cleans your house, who do you envision? Is it a guy or a girl? And I'm going to be honest with you, most people will probably think woman, right? Cleaning ladies. You don't hear cleaning men too often. Um, Domestic economy also refers to childcare. And in this country, childcare, especially young child infants, is predominantly female. It doesn't have to be. There's no law, but the fact that it is shows you that it's a gendered service. Our society sees childcare still primarily as a feminine trait. And one of the issues with that is in this society, we are still a male dominated society in many ways. Jobs that are viewed as feminine are usually paid less than jobs that are viewed as masculine or neutral. So that's a whole other aspect of this. And the last one, the sharing economy. I know you kind of my face is in the way, but this is a relatively new one. This is people sharing their goods, usually through the help of a peer-to-peer service on the internet. So the best example is Uber or Lyft, right? The driver owns the car. They're sharing their services, but they need that Lyft. They need that app, that peer-to-peer connection. Otherwise, how do they know how to do it? Otherwise, it would just be informal. Some guy driving around offering rides. Probably be illegal too, right? Or maybe communal. He was doing it for neighbors. But with the sharing economy, Airbnb, where people rent their homes out, Lyft is a good one. There are services where people can borrow tools to each other. And that's kind of a relatively new aspect of the economy. It shares a lot with informal or communal. So another way we can also look, now that we kind of know how these economies work, why some areas have more wealth than others is this idea of cumulative causation. And so growth, specifically economic growth, feeds more growth. And let me show you. Here's an example. Let's start with an area. Um, let's just say Chicago. And there's an area in Chicago. And let's just say it is Michigan Avenue in the 1950s. So today when I think about Michigan Avenue, I think, the Magnificent Mile and the shops and the stores, and it's the, business tourist center of the city. In the 1950s, that area was mainly hotels and houses. There was really no shops. But a few local businessmen thought that if they could lure some retail, some high-end stores there, and make this a very high-end shopping district, they could charge more rent than just a hotel. And so that's what happened. They tried to introduce a new exit industry. And they did. They gave incentives for Cartier of New York to move and Tiffany Jewelers. And so all of a sudden you start seeing these stores come in. And what happens? Well, that new industry creates more jobs. Um, Initially in construction, you have to build these new stores, you've got to do the wiring, um, but you have new jobs. And what happens is, with more jobs becomes more labor. So now you've got people who can do this kind of work in these high-end stores, build these stores, right? And with that, because there's more people down here and there's more people working in this area, that area also has a demand. Because the people that are going to work at the high-end stores selling jewelry and clothing, well, they're going to need a place to buy lunch, right? So there's more restaurants. They're going to need a place to buy a pack of cigarettes or something, so there's more 7-Elevens, right? And liquor stores. And there's more transportation needed, so you see more Lyft drivers, more bus routes. And so this increases demand, and people begin to move to this area for work, more population. And the more people that are, the more wealth. And why is that? Because as more people move into an area and work in that area, they create taxes. When you work, you pay taxes. Think about your paychecks, right? So there's more taxes, and the more people are coming for these new industries and these new jobs, and the more people working, the more taxes an area has. And what happens is that leads to the city being able to invest more money because now the city has more tax. So they're going to build wider sidewalks, or they're going to put in big, huge decorative planters in the middle of Michigan Avenue. And this is more growth. And what happens is all this growth creates more growth, and the area becomes a growth pole. In other words, it's attracting more businesses. And so by the 1990s, businesses were moving down to Michigan Avenue. High-end stores like the Disney store on Saks Fifth Avenue and Macy's and all these big retail stores are coming down there. And because there was so much competition, there was innovation and invention. If you wanted to stand out, you had to be bigger, brighter, and figure out a new way to do it. And what happens is all of this leads to more growth, and now this area is linked industry. So now you have not only the high-end shopping, but you've got hotels for people to stay at. You've got restaurants that are very expensive to eat at because people are shopping down there. Now you've got tourism activities like the Hard Rock Cafe, which is a tourist thing more than anything else. And you've got theaters, and all of these linked attractions feeds more growth. And what happens is you start this kind of self-sustaining engine. Growth feeds growth. Okay? Which comes to right here. This is why some areas develop. Because here's the thing, as we've been talking about this Michigan Avenue, before the 1950s, people didn't go shopping on Michigan Avenue. They didn't go to River North to go to the Hard Rock Cafe or all the restaurants. They went downtown Chicago, the Loop, State Street, right? But State Street, not that way anymore, right? So one area of downtown grew faster than the other, okay? And so these are just different models of why some areas grow wealthier and faster than others. And so the cumulative causation, it feeds back on itself. But as that growth spreads, it has this backwash effect. And what happens is any continued growth stays in that area, and the investment tends to stick to that area to the extent that it blocks growth in others. And so as Michigan Avenue grew to be more of a shopping center and more visitors and more tourism, State Street declined. Okay? And this leads to this thing that we're going to talk about in the next second, is that in a capitalist system like we have, in a capitalist economy, you need this unevenness. You need areas of growth and areas of decline. And I'll leave you with this thought. Think about real estate. You buy property, right? When you buy a house, the idea to make money, right, is you want to buy it for a low price and then eventually sell it for a high price. And you make the profit on the difference, right? Buy low, sell high. What if everything was the same value? If everything was worth the same in every part of the city of Chicago, then where would be the profit? If you bought a house for $20,000 and you sold it for $20,000, you wouldn't make a profit. Okay? So to have a capitalist economy, right, you need to have that. Otherwise, capitalism stops. Because capitalism is just that, the accumulation of capital, of money. And if you're not making money, then it's not really capitalism. And so capitalism leads to this idea of clustering. This idea that there are some areas that are wealthy and some areas that are poor. I'm going to pause right here, and when I come back, we're going to get into how this happens in detail.